Imagine being a kid from Detroit growing up in a city that seemed like it was doing everything it could to knock you down. Marshall Bruce Mathers II, better known to the world as Eminem, was born into this environment on October 17, 1972. His early life was anything but easy. Raised by his mother, Debbie Mathers, after his father abandoned the family when Marshall was just a baby, the future rapper's life was filled with chaos, poverty, and instability. Eminem's childhood home was a small, rundown house in a predominantly black, working-class neighborhood. It wasn't just the lack of money that made things difficult, though. His relationship with his mother was strained from the start. Eminem would later become famous for venting his frustrations about their relationship in his lyrics, often accusing his mother of being neglectful and even abusive. The two were constantly moving, rarely staying in one place long enough for Eminem to feel settled. He attended multiple schools, making it difficult to make friends and find a sense of belonging. Marshall was often the target of bullying. As one of the few white kids in his neighborhood, he stuck out like a sore thumb. He was small and scrawny, an easy target for the bigger kids at school. Bullies would torment him, leaving him with a deep sense of anger and frustration that he carried with him into adulthood. But there was something about that anger. It didn't just fester, it pushed him. Even as a kid, Eminem found ways to turn his pain into something creative, something powerful. School was never his thing. In fact, Eminem dropped out of high school when he was 17 after repeating the 9th grade 3 times due to poor grades and absenteeism. But it wasn't because he lacked intelligence. Far from it. Eminem had an incredible mind for language. He just didn't fit into the traditional school system. Instead of spending his time in class, he found solace in music, specifically hip-hop. It was in the late 1980s that Eminem first got hooked on hip-hop. Hip-hop wasn't just music, it was a culture, a way of life, and for Eminem, it became an obsession. He was first introduced to the genre by his uncle Ronnie, who gave him a copy of Ice-T's Reckless. That album, along with others like LL Cool J's Radio and the Beastie Boys' License to Ill, blew Eminem's mind. Here was a world where words mattered, every line was a punch, every rhyme a puzzle, and the more complex the better. He saw hip-hop as a way out, a way to rise above the mess that his life had become. Eminem started practicing obsessively. He would write lyrics in a notebook, filling page after page with rhymes, each one sharper and more complex than the last. He studied his favorite rappers, paying close attention to their flow, their delivery, and their wordplay. And soon he started crafting his own style. But it wasn't enough to just rap in his room. Eminem wanted more. He wanted to prove that he could stand alongside the best of them. And for that, he needed to be out there battling. In the late 80s and early 90s, the underground rap scene in Detroit was fierce. Rappers from all over would come together at clubs and open mics to test their skills in front of a crowd, often in brutal freestyle battles. These battles were no joke. You had to think on your feet, come up with devastating lines in real time, all while keeping your cool in front of a crowd that could turn on you in a second. For Eminem, this was his training ground. It wasn't easy, though. Being a white rapper in a predominantly black genre meant that he had to work twice as hard to earn respect. He often faced rejection, with some people doubting whether a white kid from Detroit could ever make it in hip-hop. But instead of backing down, Eminem used that doubt as fuel. He would enter battle after battle, slowly building a reputation as a skilled and ruthless lyricist. His unique blend of humor, shock value, and razor-sharp wordplay made him stand out from the crowd. During these early days, Eminem faced constant setbacks. He worked a series of low-paying jobs to make ends meet while chasing his dream, from washing dishes to flipping burgers. His music career wasn't taking off as quickly as he had hoped. He released his first album, Infinite, in 1996, but it was a commercial flop. Critics ignored it, and the few people who did listen said Eminem sounded like he was trying too hard to mimic other rappers like Nas in Arizona. The failure of Infinite hit Eminem hard. He was broke, living in a dangerous neighborhood with his girlfriend Kim and their newborn daughter Haley. At times, it seemed like everything was falling apart. But if there's one thing that would come to define Eminem's career, it's his resilience. No matter how many times life knocked him down, he always found a way to get back up. And then, just when it seemed like things couldn't get worse, a life-changing moment happened. In 1997, Eminem entered the Rap Olympics, a national competition where up-and-coming rappers battle for the top spot. Eminem didn't win the tournament, but he caught the attention of an intern at Interscope Records. That intern passed Eminem's demo tape to Dr. Dre, the legendary producer and co-founder of Aftermath Entertainment. Dre was blown away by Eminem's skill and immediately wanted to work with him. This was the turning point. What started as a kid's dream in the rough streets of Detroit was about to become a reality on the global stage. After catching the attention of Dr. Dre, Eminem's career was about to take a drastic turn. But getting to this point had been a long, tough journey. Before he could team up with one of the greatest producers in hip-hop, Eminem had to prove himself in the underground rap scene, where respect wasn't given, it had to be earned. Detroit's rap battles were legendary. These competitions were brutal, with crowds eager to see MCs rip each other apart using nothing but their words. Eminem, often the only white rapper in these battles, had to work twice as hard to prove that he belonged. But instead of being intimidated, he thrived in the pressure cooker environment. His fast-paced delivery, biting wit, and knack for shocking punchlines set him apart. His opponents often underestimated him based on his appearance, but Eminem quickly taught them not to make that mistake. He had a chip on his shoulder, and that drove him. His determination wasn't just about gaining respect from his peers. It was also personal. Eminem's life was filled with hardship, constant rejection from record labels, financial struggles, and a rocky relationship with Kim, his longtime girlfriend and future wife. They had a daughter together, Haley, and that added even more pressure. Eminem wasn't just chasing a dream anymore, he was fighting for his family's future. Every battle he entered, every rhyme he spit, had the weight of his entire life on it. At this point, it seemed like nothing was going to break through the barriers in Eminem's career. His first album, Infinite, had flopped, and with no money coming in from music, he was working dead-end jobs just to survive. He'd wash dishes or work in fast food joints during the day and hit the rap battles at night. Even when he entered studios to record, the results weren't what he had hoped for. People weren't getting it. His sound wasn't quite developed yet, and his attempts at breaking into the industry kept falling flat. Some critics claimed that he sounded too much like other East Coast rappers, and Infinite was dismissed as unoriginal. But then, in a moment of frustration and desperation, Slim Shady was born. The Slim Shady alter ego was everything Eminem wasn't, or couldn't be in real life. Slim was loud, violent, unapologetically offensive, and most of all, fearless. He said the things that Marshall Mathers couldn't say. He acted out the rage, frustration, and chaos inside Eminem's mind. Where Eminem might hesitate, Slim Shady had no such restrictions. This new persona allowed Eminem to channel all of his anger, pain, and dark humor into something powerful, something that would grab people's attention. In 1997, Eminem released the Slim Shady EP, an independent project that showcased his new persona in full force. The EP was raw, violent, and darkly comedic. In tracks like Just Don't Give a F, Eminem made it clear that Slim Shady was here to disrupt the status quo. The project caught the attention of the underground scene, but more importantly, it landed in the hands of Dr. Dre. When Dre heard the Slim Shady EP, he was immediately intrigued. Here was something different, something fresh. Dre had already built a career off recognizing and nurturing talent, but there was something about Eminem that stood out from the rest. His complex rhyme schemes, clever wordplay, and undeniable charisma all set him apart from the countless other rappers trying to make a name for themselves. Dre wasn't concerned with Eminem's skin color, he only cared about the talent. But it wasn't just Eminem's skill that appealed to Dre, it was also his story. Dre, coming from the streets of Compton, knew firsthand what it was like to struggle, to fight for every inch of success. He saw a kindred spirit in Eminem, someone who had faced enormous odds but kept pushing forward. The two of them formed an instant connection, and Dre wasted no time in getting Eminem into the studio. However, this was just the beginning. While teaming up with Dr. Dre was a huge opportunity, it also came with pressure. Eminem knew that if he didn't make the most of this chance, it could be his last shot. He had already been rejected by the industry once, and he wasn't about to let that happen again. He spent long hours in the studio working alongside Dre to craft a sound that would not only showcase his lyrical ability, but also set him apart from everything else happening in hip-hop at the time. It wasn't long before that hard work started to pay off. In 1999, Eminem released the Slim Shady LP, his major label debut. The album was a smash hit, with tracks like My Name Is and Guilty Conscience becoming instant classics. Audiences were drawn to Eminem's outrageous lyrics and his rapid-fire delivery. He was unlike anything the hip-hop world had seen before, and the public couldn't get enough. But with success came controversy. Eminem's music wasn't for the faint of heart. His lyrics often delved into violent fantasies, dark humor, and personal attacks on celebrities and even his own family. Critics accused him of promoting misogyny, homophobia, and violence. Mothers protested, politicians condemned him, and radio stations debated whether or not to play his songs. But to Eminem, the backlash was just another battle. He had faced rejection his whole life, and now, even at the height of success, he was ready to fight for his place in the industry. Eminem's rise to fame wasn't just about talent, it was about resilience. Every obstacle, every setback only made him more determined to succeed. From the underground rap battles of Detroit to his partnership with Dr. Dre, Eminem had fought for every inch of respect he had earned. And now, with the Slim Shady LP dominating the charts, it seemed like nothing could stop him. Eminem's career was at a crossroads in the late 1990s. After the disappointment of Infinite, his debut album that failed to make waves, he could have easily thrown in the towel. But that wasn't in Eminem's nature. Instead of backing down, he used the failure as motivation to create something entirely new, something that would allow him to stand out in a crowded and competitive rap scene. Out of this desire to break through, Slim Shady was born. The Slim Shady persona was everything that Marshall Mathers couldn't be. While Eminem as a person was introspective, vulnerable, and often dealing with the harsh realities of his life, Slim Shady was loud, unfiltered, and unapologetically offensive. He was a rebellious, chaotic alter ego who allowed Eminem to express his darkest thoughts without holding back. Slim Shady was a release valve, a way to channel all the anger, frustration, and humor that had been bubbling under the surface for years. In 1997, Eminem independently released the Slim Shady EP, a project that introduced this wild new character to the world. The EP was dark, violent, and laced with Eminem's trademark wit. Songs like Just Don't Give a F showcased Slim Shady's raw energy and willingness to push boundaries. He was saying things that no one else in hip-hop dared to say, and while it shocked some listeners, it resonated with others. Eminem was still struggling to make ends meet, working minimum wage jobs and taking care of his daughter, Haley, but for the first time, he was starting to gain traction in the underground rap scene. Then fate intervened. Eminem entered the 1997 Rap Olympics, a nationwide freestyle competition where the best battle rappers went head-to-head. Though he didn't win the competition, his performance caught the attention of a young intern at Interscope Records. This intern, recognizing Eminem's unique talent, passed his demo tape to Dr. Dre, one of the most respected producers in the history of hip-hop. Dre, who had already built a legacy as a member of NWA and a solo artist, was immediately blown away by Eminem's lyrical ability and distinct voice. It didn't matter to Dre that Eminem was a white rapper in a predominantly black genre. What mattered was that he had undeniable talent. Dre famously said that he didn't care if Eminem was purple, his skills spoke for themselves. Dre reached out to Eminem, and the two began working together almost immediately. For Eminem, this was a dream come true. Dre wasn't just a producer, he was a legend, someone who had shaped the sound of West Coast hip-hop and helped launch the careers of icons like Snoop Dogg and Tupac Shakur. The partnership between Dre and Eminem was electric from the start. Together, they created the Slim Shady LP, which was released in 1999. The album was a bold, audacious statement, filled with shocking lyrics, biting humor, and clever wordplay. Songs like My Name Is introduced Slim Shady to the mainstream with its irreverent lyrics and catchy beat. The song's music video, which featured Eminem dressed up in various outrageous costumes, only helped boost his visibility. But the Slim Shady LP wasn't just about jokes and shock value. Beneath the surface, the album dealt with serious themes, from Eminem's struggles with poverty to his complicated relationships with his mother and girlfriend. Tracks like Rock Bottom gave listeners a glimpse into the real Marshall Mathers, the man behind the Slim Shady mask. Eminem's ability to balance humor and raw emotion made the album a standout in a genre that was often dominated by bravado and posturing. The album was a massive success, both commercially and critically. It debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 and quickly went triple platinum. Eminem had officially arrived and the world was paying attention. But with fame came controversy. Eminem's lyrics were provocative, often violent, and laced with offensive language. Critics accused him of promoting violence, misogyny, and homophobia. His songs about his mother, his girlfriend Kim, and his darker fantasies were particularly polarizing. Eminem, however, didn't shy away from the criticism. In fact, he leaned into it. Slim Shady was never meant to be a role model. He was the embodiment of everything society wanted to ignore. To Eminem, outrage was proof that his music was striking a chord. He wasn't interested in playing it safe or conforming to mainstream expectations. Instead, he used the controversy to fuel his work, further blurring the lines between his on-stage persona and his real life. As the Slim Shady LP climbed the charts, Eminem found himself in the middle of a media firestorm. He became a favorite target of critics, politicians, and parent groups who condemned his music as harmful to young listeners. But Eminem wasn't fazed. In fact, he thrived on the attention. He had spent years trying to get people to notice his music, and now that they were paying attention, he wasn't going to back down. The Slim Shady persona had done more than just give Eminem an outlet for his anger. It had given him a way to navigate the pressures of fame. While Marshall Mathers was still dealing with the emotional weight of his past, Slim Shady was free to say and do whatever he wanted, without fear of consequences. The alter ego became a shield protecting Eminem from the constant scrutiny of the media, while allowing him to explore the darker corners of his psyche. Despite the controversy, the Slim Shady LP earned Eminem his first Grammy Award for Best Rap Album, and the song My Name Is won Best Rap Solo Performance. These accolades were a testament to Eminem's undeniable talent and his ability to connect with listeners. Even as his lyrics sparked heated debates, he was no longer just a rapper from Detroit, he was a global phenomenon. By the end of the 1990s, Eminem had established himself as one of the most exciting and controversial artists in hip-hop. His partnership with Dr. Dre had transformed him from an underground battle rapper into a mainstream superstar. But as his fame grew, so did the challenges. With his next album, the Marshall Mathers LP, Eminem would face even more controversy, more success, and more personal struggles than ever before. With the release of the Slim Shady LP, Eminem had officially made it. The album's success skyrocketed him into the mainstream, and suddenly he wasn't just a kid from Detroit anymore, he was a star. But with fame came a new set of challenges. Eminem's raw, unfiltered lyrics and his Slim Shady persona sparked controversy from day one. Many people didn't know how to handle his explicit content, and the media was quick to label him as a dangerous influence on youth culture. Eminem seemed to thrive in the chaos of it all. While other artists might have buckled under the pressure, Eminem embraced it, using the controversy to fuel his music. His lyrics, which were already sharp and biting, became even more intense as he pushed back against his critics. To him, the backlash only confirmed that he was doing something right. Slim Shady was never supposed to play by the rules, and neither was Eminem. In 2000, just 1 year after the Slim Shady LP, Eminem released what would become one of the most successful and influential albums of his career, the Marshall Mathers LP. This album took everything that people loved and hated about Eminem and amplified it. The album was a commercial success, debuting at #1 on the Billboard 200 and selling over 1.7 million copies in its first week alone, making it one of the fastest-selling albums in U.S. history. But it wasn't just the numbers that made the Marshall Mathers LP iconic. The album's content was darker, angrier, and even more personal than its predecessor. Tracks like Stan and The Way I Am showcased Eminem's ability to tell complex, emotional stories while still delivering the hard-hitting punchlines that fans had come to expect. Stan, in particular, became a cultural phenomenon, telling the chilling story of an obsessive fan who takes Eminem's lyrics too seriously, with tragic consequences. The genius of the Marshall Mathers LP was how it blurred the lines between Eminem's real life and his Slim Shady persona. On one hand, he used Slim Shady to vent his frustrations with fame, media scrutiny, and the pressures of being in the spotlight. On the other hand, the album delved into Marshall Mathers' personal struggles, his rocky relationship with Kim, his ongoing battles with his mother, and the pressure of trying to be a good father to his daughter, Haley. It was clear that while Slim Shady might have been an exaggerated, cartoonish version of himself, Eminem was pouring real emotion and experience into his music. His lyrics gave fans a glimpse into the mind of someone who was struggling to balance the demands of fame with the pain and trauma he carried from his past. Songs like Kim, a violent and disturbing fantasy about murdering his estranged wife, sparked outrage and led to protests. But for Eminem, these songs were a form of therapy, a way to cope with the darkness in his life by turning it into art. As much as Eminem's fans loved him, his critics were just as vocal. He was accused of being homophobic, misogynistic, and promoting violence. The LGBTQ community, in particular, took issue with lyrics that seemed to mock and insult gay people. Eminem's response was typically defiant. He claimed that his lyrics were misunderstood, that he wasn't trying to spread hate, but was instead reflecting the world he grew up in. His defense was that Slim Shady was a character, not a real person, and that people should be able to separate the art from the artist. The controversy surrounding the Marshall Mathers LP didn't stop it from being a massive success. In fact, it may have even helped. The more people talked about Eminem, whether they loved or hated him, the more his albums sold. He was a lightning rod for attention, and he knew how to use that to his advantage. As his fame grew, so did the number of celebrities he clashed with. Pop stars like Christina Aguilera, Will Smith, and Mariah Carey found themselves in Eminem's crosshairs as he used his music to air out his grievances in front of millions of listeners. One of Eminem's most publicized feuds was with his own mother, Debbie Mathers. Their tumultuous relationship had been a recurring theme in his music, with Eminem often accusing his mother of being neglectful and even abusive. In response, Debbie sued her son for defamation, demanding $10 million in damages. The lawsuit only added fuel to the fire, as it became another example of how Eminem's personal life bled into his music. The court case was eventually settled for $25,000, but the damage to their relationship seemed permanent. Eminem's volatile relationship with Kim was also a constant source of tabloid headlines. The two had an on-again, off-again relationship that was marked by heated arguments, separations, and reconciliations. In 2000, shortly after the release of the Marshall Mathers LP, the couple divorced. Their breakup was messy and public, with both sides airing their grievances through the media. Eminem's song Kim became the focal point of their conflict, as Kim claimed that the song's violent imagery contributed to the breakdown of their marriage. Despite their differences, the couple would later remarry in 2006, only to divorce again shortly after. But it wasn't just his personal life that was making headlines. Eminem was also involved in a string of legal battles, including one particularly notable incident in 2000 when he was arrested for assault, after pulling a gun on a man he believed was kissing Kim. The case was settled, but it added to Eminem's growing reputation as a troublemaker, both in and out of the studio. Even as the controversies mounted, Eminem's popularity continued to soar. He had managed to turn his personal demons and public scandals into some of the most compelling music of the decade. The Marshall Mathers LP not only solidified his place in hip-hop history, but it also marked a turning point in his career. Eminem wasn't just a rapper anymore, he was a cultural phenomenon. By the end of 2001, Eminem had cemented his place as one of the most influential and controversial artists of his generation. His ability to provoke and entertain in equal measure made him a force to be reckoned with, and his partnership with Dr. Dre continued to yield groundbreaking music. But as he approached the peak of his career, Eminem was also beginning to feel the weight of his fame. The pressures of being in the spotlight, combined with his personal struggles, were starting to take a toll. What started as a quest for respect had now evolved into something much bigger. Eminem was no longer just a battle rapper from Detroit, he was an icon. But as the world watched him rise to the top, they also saw the cracks beginning to form. By the early 2000s, Eminem had reached a level of fame few could imagine. He was a global superstar, a hip-hop legend, and one of the most talked about figures in pop culture. But behind the scenes, the pressure was mounting. As the success of the Marshall Mathers LP and the Eminem Show turned Eminem into a household name, the weight of fame, combined with his personal demons, began to take a serious toll on his mental and physical health. At the heart of Eminem's struggles was his addiction to prescription drugs. It started out small, a few pills here and there to take the edge off after long days in the studio. But before long, Eminem found himself relying on them just to get through the day. The combination of constant media scrutiny, a turbulent personal life, and the demands of being one of the biggest names in music had pushed him to the brink. Eminem's addiction wasn't something that happened overnight. It crept up on him slowly until one day it was controlling his life. He began using Vicodin, Ambien, and other prescription drugs in increasing amounts. His friends and family started to notice the change in him. He was becoming more reclusive, less motivated, and his once sharp focus on music began to fade. The drugs dulled the pain, but they also dulled everything else, including Eminem's passion for his art. At the same time, Eminem's personal life was in turmoil. His relationship with Kim was always a roller coaster, and their second marriage in 2006 ended in another messy divorce just a few months later. The constant strain of their on-again, off-again relationship, combined with his struggles as a father, only added to the pressure. Despite his love for his daughter, Haley, Eminem found it difficult to balance his career with his responsibilities as a parent. As his addiction worsened, Eminem's music began to suffer. His 2004 album, Encore, received mixed reviews. While it had its share of hit singles, like Just Lose It and Mockingbird, fans and critics alike noticed a shift in Eminem's tone. The sharpness that had defined his earlier work seemed to be fading. Songs like Big Weenie and Ass Like That were seen as silly and less impactful compared to the raw intensity of his earlier albums. It was clear that something wasn't right. Behind the scenes, Eminem was spiraling. He had become deeply dependent on drugs, using them not just to escape the pressures of fame, but to cope with his growing depression. His weight fluctuated, his energy dropped, and he found himself in and out of rehab. But the pull of addiction was strong, and each time he tried to get clean, he found himself falling back into old habits. The breaking point came in 2007 when Eminem nearly died from an overdose. He had been taking a combination of drugs, and one night he took too many. His organs began to shut down, and if not for quick medical intervention, Eminem might not have survived. This terrifying experience was a wake-up call for the rapper. He realized that if he didn't make a change, his addiction would kill him. In the aftermath of the overdose, Eminem disappeared from the public eye. He retreated into himself, spending the next few years trying to piece his life back together. He knew that getting clean wasn't going to be easy, but he was determined to do it for the sake of his daughter and his career. The road to recovery was long and painful, but it also became a turning point in Eminem's life. During this time, Eminem stepped back from the music industry. The man who had once dominated the charts and headlines was now a shadow of his former self. He rarely made public appearances, and rumors began swirling about whether he would ever make music again. Fans wondered if Eminem was finished, if the weight of his personal struggles had finally gotten the best of him. But what they didn't know was that Eminem was quietly working on one of the most important comebacks in music history. As Eminem focused on his recovery, he also began writing again. Music had always been his outlet, the way he dealt with his pain, and now it was becoming his therapy. He poured his struggles with addiction, fame, and fatherhood into his lyrics, using them as a way to confront his demons. But this time it wasn't Slim Shady doing the talking, it was Marshall Mathers. In 2009, Eminem returned to the spotlight with the release of Relapse, his first album in 5 years. The album was a deeply personal exploration of his battle with addiction and his journey to recovery. While Relapse received mixed reviews, it marked a significant step in Eminem's healing process. Songs like Beautiful and Deja Vu gave listeners a raw and unfiltered look at the pain and isolation that had defined Eminem's life during his years of addiction. In Beautiful, Eminem speaks candidly about his feelings of hopelessness and self-doubt, while Deja Vu recounts the vicious cycle of addiction that nearly cost him his life. Despite the mixed reception, Relapse was a commercial success, debuting at #1 on the Billboard 200 and selling over 600,000 copies in its first week. For Eminem, the album wasn't just a return to music, it was a testament to his resilience. He had faced his darkest moments and come out the other side ready to reclaim his place in hip-hop. But Relapse was just the beginning. Eminem wasn't content with simply making a comeback. He wanted to prove that he was still one of the greatest rappers of all time. The following year, in 2010, he released Recovery, an album that not only solidified his return, but also showcased his growth as both an artist and a person. Eminem's release of Recovery in 2010 was more than just another album, it was a statement. After battling addiction, personal turmoil, and a near-death experience, he had fought his way back, and now he was ready to show the world that he was still at the top of his game. Recovery was a departure from the Slim Shady persona that had defined so much of his earlier work. Instead of leaning on the shock value and humor that had made him famous, Eminem took a more introspective and serious approach, focusing on his personal growth, his struggles with addiction, and his desire to become a better person. The album was a massive success, both commercially and critically. Songs like Not Afraid and Love the Way You Lie dominated the charts, with the latter becoming one of Eminem's biggest hits ever. Featuring pop singer Rihanna, Love the Way You Lie was a raw exploration of a toxic relationship, with both Eminem and Rihanna drawing from their own painful experiences to create a powerful and emotionally charged track. The song's success helped push Recovery to the top of the charts, solidifying Eminem's return to the spotlight. But Recovery wasn't just about reclaiming his place in the music world. It was about redemption. For years, Eminem had been known for his anger, his controversy, and his unfiltered lyrics. But with this album, he showed a more mature and reflective side. He wasn't the same person who had written the real Slim Shady or Kim. He had been through the fire and come out on the other side with a new perspective on life, fame, and fatherhood. Not Afraid, one of the standout tracks from Recovery, was an anthem of resilience and determination. In it, Eminem addressed his struggles head-on, offering a message of hope to anyone going through tough times. The song's lyrics were a direct response to his past battles with addiction and depression, and it resonated with millions of fans who saw it as a sign that Eminem had finally turned a corner in his life. The success of Recovery marked a new chapter in Eminem's career. He had proven that he could evolve as an artist and remain relevant in an ever-changing industry. But more importantly, he had shown that he could rise above his personal demons and come back stronger than ever. In many ways, Recovery was the culmination of everything Eminem had been through: his childhood struggles, his rise to fame, his battles with addiction, and it cemented his legacy as one of the greatest rappers of all time. In the years following Recovery, Eminem continued to release music that pushed the boundaries of hip-hop. In 2013, he dropped the Marshall Mathers LP 2, a sequel to his 2000 classic. The album was a return to form for Eminem, blending the introspection of Recovery with the biting humor and lyrical complexity of his earlier work. Tracks like Rap God showcased Eminem's incredible technical skill, with the song featuring a rapid-fire verse that set a world record for the most words in a hit single. Rap God was more than just a display of skill. It was a reminder that Eminem was still a force to be reckoned with. His ability to craft intricate rhyme schemes and deliver lightning-fast verses put him in a league of his own, and the song became an instant classic. But beyond the technical prowess, the Marshall Mathers LP 2 also showed that Eminem was still willing to tackle difficult and personal subjects. Songs like Headlights featured Eminem apologizing to his mother for the pain he had caused her through his earlier music, marking a significant moment of reconciliation and personal growth. As the years went on, Eminem's influence on the hip-hop world only grew. He had paved the way for countless other white rappers, proving that race didn't have to be a barrier in a genre that had traditionally been dominated by black artists. His success opened the door for other artists like Macklemore, Machine Gun Kelly, and G-Eazy, who followed in his footsteps and carved out their own lanes in the industry. But Eminem's impact wasn't just limited to hip-hop. He had become a cultural icon known for his uncompromising attitude, his refusal to conform, and his willingness to speak his mind, no matter the consequences. Over the years, he had used his platform to address a wide range of social and political issues, from gun violence to racism to the state of American politics. In 2017, he made headlines with a freestyle at the BET Hip Hop Awards in which he called out then-President Donald Trump, sparking a national conversation about the role of artists in political activism. Despite the controversies, the feuds, and the personal struggles, Eminem's legacy as one of the greatest rappers of all time remains undeniable. His influence can be heard in the work of countless artists who followed in his footsteps, and his impact on hip-hop culture is immeasurable. He changed the way people thought about rap music, pushing the boundaries of what was possible with language, rhyme, and storytelling. And yet, despite all the success, all the accolades, and all the influence, Eminem remains a deeply private and introspective figure. He has always been someone who lets his music do the talking, and even after more than 2 decades in the industry, he continues to push himself to new creative heights. Eminem's story is one of resilience. From his humble beginnings in Detroit to his rise to the top of the music world, he has faced more challenges and setbacks than most people could imagine. But through it all, he has remained true to himself, using his pain and struggles to fuel his art. In doing so, he has not only cemented his place in hip-hop history, but has also inspired millions of fans around the world who see his journey as a testament to the power of perseverance. As Eminem continues to release music and perform for audiences around the globe, his legacy only grows stronger. He has become more than just a rapper. He's a symbol of triumph over adversity, proof that no matter how many times life knocks you down, you can always get back up.